Gautam, we are now being joined by R C Bhargava. Mr. Bhargava, thanks a lot for joining us. I'll get your overall take on the budget first and then dive into some specifics.
Overall, I think the budget is a very good budget. It is a good budget because I think it lays down the roadmap in various areas which we've all been wanting, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's taxes on the corporate front, whether it's things like the GST, whether it's fiscal consolidation. In all these areas, we have a clear roadmap. I think what will matter in the future now is the effectiveness of implementation at ground level of many of these programs, particularly on the infrastructure side, as to how effectively these will be implemented, how effectively the direct transfer of subsidies will take place, and such things. But overall, I think it's an excellent roadmap which has been laid out.
So let me just come into some aspects of that roadmap, because I think you've picked on what the key highlight of this budget clearly is. So let's start off with infrastructure. So government spending a certain amount, which has already been announced, new infrastructure bonds coming in, and a couple of days back we saw, of course, a major spending announced in the railways. All of this, is it enough to really kickstart investment in infrastructure? Which has been sort of, the cycle has been somewhat clogged in the last few years.
Another thing which was mentioned, there are two other things which were mentioned which are extremely important for the infrastructure sector and which have been holding up the infrastructure development for all these years. One is the PPP model, which has been so strongly weighted towards the government side that most private investors have really not been able to make the PPP model work. And part of this reason why it has worked, and which is my second point, is the question of dispute resolution where the state is involved. And that has been a big bane of infrastructure PPP model, because disputes are raised and then nothing gets resolved and the companies run into losses. So I think how effectively both these will be addressed in the legislation and the actions which have been taken will, I think, determine how much private money flows into the infrastructure sector.
Right. One of the other major roadmaps that seems to have come out, and you were alluding to it, is government spending in general. So one is the government spends on investment, which is presumably a good idea. But the other part of it, which is even the subsidies and other government spending, again, there seems to be a directional shift more towards having some sort of a social net, universal security, more and more health insurance, and in subsidies itself, a transition away from what affects factor costs to more of a direct cash transfers. From an economic point of view, are both of those very welcome steps?
I think both are essentially required in this country, because the direct transfer of subsidies will eliminate largely the kind of leakages, losses, and misdirection of subsidies which are taking place. And I think it will result in substantial savings of the subsidy budget from what has been existing in the past to what will happen in the future, depending how effectively the direct transfer takes place. At the same time, I think this social network using the Jan Dhan Yojana and technology is something which we need in the long term, because many of the issues, especially relating to labor laws and health and things, are very much connected to having some kind of a social safety network in place. And I think once these things start working, it will be easier to take steps in other directions. So I think some of these steps which government has taken in the last few months are being now integrated into a bigger picture of how they will be used to change the structure of the economy going forward.
So a company like Maruti, for example, if you're looking at the environment and you're looking at whether to substantially step up your bet in India or the amount which you're investing in India, what would be the factors that you would be taking away from this? And the fact that he also seems to be moving to a slightly roadmap type approach, that over the next 4 years, we will reduce corporate tax. Sure. Is that the sort of a thing which gives you comfort, because people don't like surprises?
I think the fact that there is no surprises, even this corporate tax and the removal of exemptions, he has actually deferred till next year so that people get to know what's going to happen and can plan for it. The GAR front, he's also said, will apply prospectively. I think those are very positive things for investments. Maruti, of course, was going ahead with investments in Gujarat anyway, because we were expecting that this government will take positive steps and that the future will be much brighter than what the last few years have been. And so we are going ahead with the investments. What may happen as a result of what this budget seems to indicate will happen is that the pace of those investments may need to be expedited and made in a shorter period than what we had originally thought.
Right, Mr. Bhargav, thank you so much.